Congratulations on your purchase of the Grace Company's Gracie Queen or King quilting frame. This is a no-base frame designed to make your quilting projects easier, more convenient, and more beautiful. We know you'll enjoy the frame for years to come. This video will show the process of setting up your Gracie King frame. If you are assembling in a crib or queen frame, we will note the differences between the king sizes shown and what changes you should make in the process. The video instructions are meant to be used as a companion to the printed instruction book that came with your frame. It is most helpful to follow along in your instruction book as you go through the video. All of the parts and hardware used in this video will be called by the names and letters from the parts list in the instruction book. Before we begin, gather the tools you will need to complete this assembly. We have provided the open wrench and the Allen wrenches. It is also a good idea to identify the parts of your frame comparing the box contents with the parts list in your booklet. This will help you get familiar with the various pieces, and you can check to make sure you have all the parts. If anything appears to be missing or damaged, contact the Grace Company directly at 1-800-264-0644. First, we will assemble the leveling feet of the frame. For a king-size frame, you will need all of the legs. If setting up a queen-size frame, you will need the 4 angled legs, 1 middle back leg, and 1 middle front. If setting up in crib size, you will only need the 4 angled legs. First, thread the leveling foot through the leveling foot saddle. Now attach them both to the bottom of the leg using 4 SA screws. Do this for all necessary legs. The left and right frame ends have an L and R etched on them. Attach 2 angled height adjustable legs to the right frame end on the same side as the R. Use 2 CB bolts to attach each leg to the frame end. Most people find that using the 3rd and 4th holes up from the bottom gives them the most comfortable working height. On the outer side of each frame end, attach a frame end extension using 4 CB bolts. Now attach the parts A and B angle braces to the inner side of the frame end using an NC nut and CD bolt for each angle brace. The NC nuts are placed in the slot in the angle brace. Next, secure a rail bracket extension to the inner side of the frame end extension using 4 CB bolts. An L and R have been engraved into the rail bracket extensions to indicate which side of the frame they should be attached to. Now, thread 2 BA bolts through the holes on the rail bracket extension. Secure the bolts on the other side with a WB washer and NB nut. Thread 2 more BA bolts through the holes on the frame end and secure them with washers and NB nuts as well. Repeat this whole process now to complete the left frame end. If you're setting up your frame in the crib size, you do not need the middle legs in this step and can skip to step 4. If you're setting up your frame in queen size, you will need 1 full middle leg assembly. If you're setting up in king size, you will need 2 middle leg assemblies. First, attach the arched middle to the middle leg top using 2 CD bolts and 2 NC nuts. Place the NC nuts into the slots in the arched middle. Next, we'll attach the vertical braces to the arched middle using 2 CE bolts for each vertical brace. Make sure to attach the vertical braces to the arched middle on the opposite sides of the threaded inserts. Now insert 2 NC nuts into each of the vertical braces and 2 more NC nuts into 2 middle leg supports. When all of the NC nuts are in place, attach 2 middle leg supports to the vertical braces and middle leg top using 4 CD bolts for each middle leg support. To complete the middle leg assembly, attach the front and back middle legs to the vertical braces using 2 CB bolts. Make sure to attach the height adjustable legs to the sides of the vertical braces that are opposite of the threaded inserts. Also make sure that the legs are screwed into the holes at the same height as the legs on the frame ends. If you are setting up the king-sized frame, repeat this whole step to build another middle leg assembly before continuing. Now we'll attach the aluminum track supports to the frame ends. We'll start with the left frame end. For a king or queen-sized frame, we'll attach 2 of the 3-foot aluminum track supports to the left frame end. For a crib-sized frame, use only the 5-foot track supports. To attach the track supports to the frame end, use 4 CE bolts in the frame end and 1 CE bolt for each of the angle braces on the frame ends. Next, for a king or queen only, attach the other end of the aluminum track supports to the middle legs, using 2 CF bolts for each track support. If you are setting up a crib-sized frame, just attach the ends of the track supports you already used to the right frame end. For a king-size frame like the one shown, attach the last 3-foot sections of track support between the middle legs and the right frame end, the same as you did on the left frame side. If setting up in queen size, attach the 5-foot sections between the already used middle legs and the right frame end. To finish up the track supports on the king size frame, connect the ends to the middle legs using 2 CF bolts for each track support. Now we'll place each 3 or 5-foot wooden tabletop onto each 3 or 5-foot track support used. The 3-foot tables have one end with holes and one end without. Make sure that the end with holes goes over the middle legs. Attach the tables to the frame by inserting CF bolts through the top of the holes and securing them with ND nuts from the bottom. Use the provided wrench to hold the nuts on the bottom. Now insert the plastic track by firmly pressing it into the track supports, starting at one end and working your way down. For a king frame, use the 11-foot pieces of track like the one shown. For a queen frame, use the 8-foot pieces. And for a crib, use the 5-foot pieces. The take-up rail brackets and fabric rail brackets have an L or R etched into them to show which side of the frame they go on. The take-up rail brackets have a longer hole than the fabric rail brackets. Attach these to the already installed bolts in the frame ends using 2 WA washers and 2 PA plastic knobs for each bracket. Attach the fabric rail brackets to the rail extensions in the same way, using 2 washers and 2 nuts for each bracket. Next, attach a bungee rail holder to each of the bungee arms using 2 CE bolts for each bungee rail holder. Make sure to attach them to the bungee arms on the sides opposite from the threaded inserts. Finally, bolt the bungee arms to the inside of each of the fabric rail brackets using 2 CE bolts for each bungee arm. Now we'll assemble the rails of the frame. A crib-sized frame rail consists of one 5-foot rail section. A queen-sized rail is made of one 5-foot section and one 3-foot section. A king-sized rail is made from one 5-foot section and 2 3-foot sections, with the 5-foot section going in the middle. There are 2 kinds of rails. The take-up rail is 1.5 inches in diameter, and the other rails are 2 inches in diameter. For king and queen-sized frames, join 2 sections of rails together using a rail coupler. Fasten the rail coupler to the rails using 6 SB bolts in each side of the coupler. Do not tighten the bolts completely until you're sure the rails are properly aligned. Build all of your rails this way. Firmly press the PD square end caps into one end of each rail. Secure the end caps to the rails with 3 SC screws for each end cap. Now firmly press the PE square end caps into the other end of your rails, and secure them the same way. Place a PF ratchet wheel over the square end caps of all the rails except for the 2-inch diameter 4th rail if you have one. Now we'll place the 1.5-inch diameter take-up rail into the slots at the top of the frame. Make sure the rail end with the ratchet wheel goes into the right frame end as shown here. Install the rest of the rails into place the same way. The fourth rail that comes with the Gracie King or Gracie King extension has no ratchet wheel on the end. This goes into place on the bottom of the frame. With all the rails in place, insert the PB shoulder end caps into both ends of each rail, using a BC screw for each shoulder end cap. Do this for all of the rails. Now attach the PC ratchet stops to the right end rail brackets using BB bolts. Do not over-tighten these bolts. When the ratchet stops are in the locking position, the rails will only roll the correct way. When needed, turn the ratchet stops to the opposite position to allow the rails to roll backwards. Make sure that the ratchet wheels are set up so that the rails spin in the directions shown here. If yours do not, you may need to flip the ratchet wheels on your rails. The sewing machine carriage is made of two parts, the top carriage and the bottom carriage. We'll start with the top carriage. To assemble the top carriage, attach the left and right handles to the holes in the back of the top carriage plate using two 6mm by 10mm socket button head screws and two 6mm hex nuts for each handle. You will have to use the wrench to hold the nuts while tightening the screws from the other side. Next, insert two 6mm hex nuts into the slots of the black handle brace. Attach the handle brace to the top of the handles by threading two 6x40mm socket button head screws through the handles and the hex nuts into the handle brace. To assemble the bottom carriage, first firmly push the bottom plate extrusion end caps into the corners of the bottom carriage. Next, peel the backing off the double-sided tape on the bottom carriage. Take the black bottom plate platform and, with the textured side up, press it firmly into place onto the bottom carriage. Now we'll put the carriage and your sewing machine on the frame. First, remove the take-up rail from the frame. Next, place the bottom carriage on the frame so that all four wheels touch the plastic tracks and the bottom carriage rolls smoothly from one side of the frame to the other. Next, place the top carriage onto the bottom carriage so that the wheels line up with the tracks on the bottom carriage. Now place your sewing machine on the top carriage so that it is centered from left to right and top to bottom. The frame carriage comes with 4 black sewing machine clamps. The lever on the back of the sewing machine clamps is open when up, and in the locked position when down. Open the 4 clamps and slide them into place on the carriage up against your sewing machine. Now push the levers down to lock the clamps and your sewing machine in place. Now move the carriage and machine all the way to one end of the frame. Replace the take-up rail through the throat of your sewing machine. Congratulations! You've completed the assembly of your Gracie quilting frame. If you set up the frame in queen or crib size, make sure to save any leftover hardware or pieces. All that's left is to install your fabric and begin quilting.